We live in a society that operates on a very specific, widely accepted rule. The logic goes, if you can secure financial success, your place at the table is secured right along with it. Wealth buys access, and access buys power. This diagram illustrates where that equation breaks apart. For Black Americans, the assumption that money equals power simply does not hold up. The wealth input becomes completely isolated from institutional equality. Reaching a high income doesn't automatically shield you from systemic bias. Often, true equal footing feels limited entirely to the boundaries of the Black community itself. That is the one space where your worth is not being constantly weighed against a backdrop of inherited bias. Our collective reliance on this wealth shield is incredibly naive. To understand why money fails to protect certain people, we have to look closely at exactly what society is actually judging. Culturally, socially, behaviorally, Black people navigate life, express ambition, and hold values just like anyone else. There is no inherent difference in character or capability across groups. Black people are distinct from most other groups in one highly visible, undeniable way. It is entirely about pigmentation, a single surface-level trait. Yet an entire infrastructure of assumptions has been built around that one visual difference, completely bypassing the way a person actually acts. So let's run a stress test on a popular proposed solution, the idea that we can solve inequality merely by closing the economic wealth gap. We know that a Black applicant with strong credentials still faces a resume screen that never gets past the name at the top. The economic background of the applicant doesn't matter if they don't get the interview. This comparative diagram shows what happens in real estate. A Black homeowner in a rising neighborhood still receives a lower appraisal than a white neighbor with identical property specs. Same square footage, same success, wildly different valuation. Bias does not wait for poverty to arrive. It operates highly efficiently on success. This is why the economic silver bullet fails. Implicit bias actively targets and degrades the wealth you manage to accumulate. So let's reset and run a second stress test. What if we magically dismantled all implicit bias tomorrow? Would that fix the problem? Unfortunately, no. The compounded economic damage inflicted over generations of exclusion does not simply reverse itself just because people suddenly stop being prejudiced. We tend to think of racism and economic exclusion as two distinct, parallel tracks that never touch. But in reality, economic exclusion and racial bias constantly feed into each other. They operate as a mutually reinforcing system, actively locking together. Because these two forces continuously trigger one another, treating them as separate issues is structurally doomed. Fix one, and the other just restarts the cycle. We have to reevaluate how we navigate this entire landscape. It is entirely impossible to view economics and racism as separate battlegrounds. They aggressively collide. Money is the undisputed baseline of power in our society. It's what people universally chase and respect, making mastery of the economic landscape a mandatory requirement. Yet, because bias can override that hard-earned wealth based entirely on physical appearance, fighting the cultural battle for human dignity is equally mandatory. You cannot separate the currency from the culture. If we want to change the reality on the ground, we have to fight economic disparity and racial prejudice simultaneously. You have to fight both at the exact same time, or you solve neither.